Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
The following program contains graphic, real-life footage of animals attacking people. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Now stay with us as we find out what happens when animals attack.
I may have ran 10 yards or so before the bear was on me, and the pain is just incredible.
And when I sat up, I knew instantly I was attacked by a shark, and I was pregnant, and I thought for sure I got the baby.
I turned, and the bear was in my face. And a tooth went into the skull, and that's where my eye popped out of the eye socket.
I just felt the bite in my side here. I think there's a lot of blood in the sea.
I knew there was imminent danger. My grandson was going to be killed in front of my eyes.
The bear grabbed him by the leg, the mouth around his upper thigh, and sank his teeth in all the way. The teeth met.
And if you're letting it around, my neck. Yes, head down.
As I was looking through the camera, I just knew in my mind that I was videoing my husband being killed.
Good evening, and welcome to the second edition of When Animals Attack. Tonight, you're going to see some frightening home video footage of animals attacking people when they least expect it. Plus, some riveting true life stories about how terrifying, devastating, and deadly animal attacks can be. A note of caution, many of the scenes you're about to see were filmed during actual attacks. As a result, they are both violent and graphic. So again, viewer discretion is advised. We begin with a professional bear trainer in Montana, working in a cage with an animal he's worked with many times before. The trainer is hitting the bear on the snout, his attempt to make it behave. When suddenly the bear attacks. The speed and power of the bear are overwhelming. The trainer is lucky. The bear's reaction to his training methods could have easily gotten him killed. When animals attack, there's almost always a reason. When we invade an animal's natural habitat, threaten its food supply, or endanger its young, we put ourselves at risk. Bears can be especially deadly when their young are threatened. Here's a chilling story about a group of land surveyors who did just that and nearly paid with their lives. After a day of surveying in the Alaskan wilderness, Kyle Schull and fellow surveyors Diane Nelson and John Pex were hiking out to meet the helicopter that would take them home.
It was actually a nice day. The weather was clear, and that was always important for us. And we had been seeing lots of bears in the Lake Iliamna area, so, we're being cautious.
They had no idea they were about to experience a vicious animal attack.
We're probably all within a 100-foot circle, maybe 150-foot circle. We're all close, and we could see each other. Basically, I couldn't see Kyle, but I could see Diane. Diane could see both of us.
Being sort of athletic and whatnot, I sort of wanted to be first, and I was always trudging ahead.
It's this way!
Kyle led the way, Diane was in the middle, and John was bringing up the rear. He had the only gun.
As soon as I said, "Hey, Diane, I'll see you at the clearing," I started approaching this little depression with this thick grass in it. All of a sudden, out from that grass burst these bears.
Bear! He went, bear! And all of a sudden, I look over where he's at, and I can see him through the brush, and I saw a large bear kind of stand up and woof, and then Kyle starts running back towards me.
My only instinct was, I got to get back to where John was with the gun. and I may have ran 10 yards or so before the bear was on me.
Realizing Kyle was in trouble, Diane called to John for help.
I wanted to help Kyle. That was really my first reaction. I didn't feel threatened. All of a sudden, there is a bear on Kyle, and I wanted to help him.
It never dawned on me that somebody was actually being attacked at that point in time. I figured there was a bear scaring the tar out of him.
But Kyle was fighting for his life with a 700-pound Alaskan grizzly bear.
And the pain is just incredible as she's ripping this pack off of me and finally getting her teeth into some flesh, just slamming as hard as somebody could possibly hit you in the back. But it was a mouth and teeth. I figured that was it. My God, she's killing me.
Without a weapon, Diane knew she couldn't stop the attack, so she tried to distract the bear.
Hang in there, John! And I just kept a chant going. I went, John, bring the gun over here. Bring the gun. There's a bear on Kyle. There's a bear on Kyle.
The grizzly left Kyle and turned its deadly rage on Diane.
But I turned, and the bear was in my face. She caught this part of my head where a tooth went under the brow line, and a tooth went into the skull, and that's where my eye popped out of the eye socket.
When John finally arrived, there was only one thing he could do.
I instantly pulled up and shot. And the only thought was, keep it high. I didn't want to hit her. But I fired really fast. I pulled that gun up and I shot it just almost instantaneously.
John's first shot caused the bear to drop Diane. But then the raging animal charged at him. He only had 4 bullets left.
And I shot it in the left eye with the next shot. And that just forced its head down. And it was so close by then, it was probably less than 15 feet. Got another shot off and I broke the neck. I shot basically right under the jaw and I broke the neck. And if the bear hadn't been coming uphill towards me, some momentum probably would have carried it right over the top of me.
As John went to help Diane, he still didn't know that Kyle had also been attacked.
He walked into where I could see him, and his whole scalp was down on his shoulder. I could walk up and I could tap his skull, just like if you were holding a ball or something. That was the bare bone.
When their helicopter finally arrived, the 3 surveyors were airlifted to a nearby hospital for treatment. Kyle would require 4,000 stitches and skin grafts from his legs to close his wounds. Diane would need 2,000 stitches and surgery to repair the damage to her eye.
Normally, bears don't attack people. We're not what one would consider their normal food item. However, when people do survive a bear attack, in almost every instance, they say that there were cubs around or that they surprised the bear and they didn't see the bear until it was already on top of them.
I do feel lucky that I was able to survive a wild animal attack. Part of that luck was that John had the gun that day, and so he was able to run through the woods and kind of save the day.
I think I'm probably one of the luckiest people around to have sustained that much damage to my head and my body and still be talking.
If I hadn't killed the bear with that last shot, there's a good chance we would all ended up dead.
A person that survives a bear attack is extremely lucky. You're looking at an animal that is built for power, grace, and speed. And they can tear apart huge logs with their claws, and their canines can crush a human skull.
Still to come, a furious deer attack, a terrible twist by an angry alligator, and a vicious pit bull attacks an animal control officer, all on When Animals Attack.
As we all know, dogs can be man's best friend, loyal and loving companions to young and old alike. But depending on how certain dogs are trained, bred, or abused, they can also be vicious attackers, capable of inflicting serious, even fatal wounds in a matter of seconds. We turn now to what can happen when pet dogs attack. First up, the story of an animal control officer in Los Angeles who was simply trying to do her job when she met up with a pit bull trained to kill.
On June 22, 1987, Florence Crowell had been an animal control officer for 5 years. She was responding to a complaint about a pit bull attack on a landlord and his 7-year-old daughter.
On that day, I got a call for a vicious dog at large. As an animal control officer, we normally patrol the area and I couldn't see the dog, so I went to the location.
When Florence arrived, she discovered a news crew from KCBS in Los Angeles had heard about the complaint and was already on the scene.
The owner of the dog, at that time, she didn't open the door, but she did speak to me through the door, and she said that she was willing to talk to me, but she wanted the news crews to get off her property.
But before the TV crew could leave, there would be a heated argument.
The door was open!
She became upset, telling me that no one would take the animal, that she would leave with the dog, and that she was coming out of the house with the dog, and if anything occurred, it would be not her responsibility.
Benjamin's coming out, so if you don't want to get bitten, you better get out of here.
I felt that if she did come out, that there was no way that I could control as far as what the animal would do, because I knew that the dog had been trained to kill. All I could see was teeth coming after me. The only thing I could do to protect myself was to raise my arm or try to turn away. And he was trained to kill because he was jumping and trying to get my neck area. Only thing I could think of is that a feeling of being helpless, and actually I felt that I was going to die.
I told you to stay away from me. Get in the car.
Call 911 and get the paramedics.
The dog owner was convicted of 3 counts of assault with a deadly weapon, 1 count of improperly caring for a vicious animal, and served 180 days in a psychiatric hospital. Florence spent 5 days in the hospital with severe lacerations to her breast and chest. The bones in her left hand were crushed.
After the accident with the dog, I felt that I couldn't perform my job as an animal control officer, and I had a certain fear for the animal too.
Florence never returned to her job as an animal control officer. After being impounded for 2 years, the pit bull was destroyed. His owner died of a heart attack 2 years later.
When pet dogs attack, it's usually because they've been specifically trained or abused by their owners. The results, as we've just seen, can be horrifying. Here now is some startling home video footage of an attack that took place earlier this year in France. This time, the attackers are Rottweilers, and the victim is an unsuspecting teenager walking home from sports practice.
The 16-year-old French boy is helpless as he's attacked by 2 dogs weighing more than 65 pounds each. It took several minutes for their owner and 2 passers-by to restrain the dogs.
I was on my way home, and I saw the 2 dogs, and the male saw me. When he got to where I was, he jumped me and bit me. Then the female knocked me down, and I called for help and everything. And then someone came and helped me, and he also got bitten.
The victim was later admitted to a hospital where he received numerous stitches to close the wounds in his arms and legs.
According to the Humane Society, there are more than 4 million pet dog attacks each year in the United States, and most of them are on children. But what if pet dogs viciously attacked an unsuspecting child, and instead of the dogs being punished, the child's parents were? Sound impossible? Not in 1989, not in Texas. Here's the story.
Emory, Texas, just outside Dallas, was the scene of an excruciating family tragedy for Debbie Lovelace and her common-law husband, John Miller. On the morning of January 4th, 1989, John was working on a project next door while Debbie's 4-year-old daughter, April Tucker, played outside. Debbie finished up her chores at the house and went down to help John with the project.
I asked him where April was because she wasn't around anywhere. And he said he hadn't seen her. So I went outside to call for her. And I could hear something in the distance. I thought she was up in the field playing. And I told her to come to the house.
But April never came. When John and Debbie went looking for her, they found her at the base of a tree.
And when I seen her, she didn't have any clothes on. She was laying on her stomach.
There was a big gash torn out of her leg, and I immediately knew that she was in deep trouble.
John had been trained as a paramedic and immediately began to administer first aid to April.
And I said, "April, what happened?" And she said, "Dogs did it." That was the first time I had any inclination of what happened.
April was rushed to the hospital, but she had lost so much blood that tragically she died on the operating table.
Her body had took all it could take, and she went into a second shock. And they couldn't save her. They tried, but they couldn't do anything.
What happened next stunned the grief-stricken parents. Prosecutors said April had not been killed by dogs. They claimed she had been murdered by her parents.
I felt horrible when they didn't believe anything that we said. I just couldn't understand it. Because we were telling the truth, and it's like it didn't matter what we said.
When defense lawyers couldn't produce autopsy photos to prove that April had been killed by dogs, John and Debbie were convicted of murder.
When they said guilty, we both just stood there, just kind of rock still.
The couple spent 4 years in prison, all the while insisting on their innocence.
Well, all 4 years I was in prison, I wrote the governor, I wrote legislators, I wrote congressmen, I wrote anybody that I thought might listen.
Finally, Debbie and John got a break. Texas attorney Robert Artis agreed to appeal their case. Then 26 injury and autopsy photos were found in the back of a desk and entered into evidence.
And then I could see paw prints. I could see where the canine teeth had been embedded, and that convinced me that there had to be some animal involved in this.
5 nationally respected forensics experts agreed and would testify that April had been killed by dogs.
They looked at these pictures and they told me that dogs had actually done it to her. And that gave me hope that somehow or another that the truth was going to come out and we were going to get to go home.
On December 15th, 1993, Debbie and John's convictions were overturned and they were set free.
It was a situation where people do not want to believe that kids can be killed or injured by their pets around the house, and they can be and are.
John and Debbie broke off their relationship while in prison, and both have since remarried. Their new spouses are police officers. They would like their story to serve as a warning to others.
Number one, never trust animals. 100%. Trust them, baby them. I've got a dog now that's as big a baby as you'll ever see. But I will never 100% trust an animal.
Well, I'd like people to know that we are innocent of what they said that we did. That not to believe that things like this couldn't happen to them, because it can happen to anybody.
Still ahead, a sudden shark attack, a deadly charge by a raging bull, and a dangerous encounter with an alligator. All on When Animals Attack.
When animals attack, there's usually a reason, but there's seldom any warning, just the shocking aftermath of a sudden event. Watch what happens when a team of experienced handlers try to move an ornery alligator from one pen to another.
The gator snaps as one man attempts to put a noose over its head. Then the animal tries to twist away as they enter the other pen. Now watch what happens when the alligator suddenly flips over again, taking the handler and his arm with it.
Push the baby down. No.
In a single unexpected move, the powerful alligator inflicts a painful and debilitating injury.
Just as there are dangers in the deep, there are also wonderful surprises. We sent our cameras to the Red Sea in Egypt for this next story about a man who was attacked by a shark and saved in a most unusual way.
On July 22, 1996, Martin Richardson of Essex, England, was vacationing at the Gulf of Aqaba in Egypt. He and a friend had been taking scuba diving lessons.
It was the third day of the course. It was the first time that I'd really gone down to 6 or 7 meters and actually had a proper dive, really.
On their way back to port after the dive, the group decided to go back in the water to swim with some dolphins.
We got round the corner on the northern side of Marsa Baraka, and we saw a pod of dolphins, 4 or 5 dolphins.
There was all friends on the boat, and we're having a good time. There's a lot of high spirits. We saw 3 dolphins and a little baby dolphin out there, so we started messing around. So I jumped in to go swimming, with the dolphins.
After swimming with the dolphins for several minutes, the others returned to the boat. Martin lingered, not realizing there was a shark in the water.
I kept looking backwards to see where the boat was, and then all of a sudden, I just felt the bite, in my side here, and then there's a lot of blood in the sea.
Martin had been attacked by a shark.
It took 2 bites out of my side, then it went away, and then it came back, and that's when it bit me just on the top here and a little bit down my arm. I started screaming to my friends to get on over and get me out of the water.
As Martin struggled, bleeding in the water, and Harry went to save him, the forces of nature were also coming to his rescue.
I was going to Martin, and I remember seeing that dolphin come past him like that, and another dolphin swim round him just as I was arriving.
The dolphins Martin had been swimming with were keeping the shark at bay.
I pulled him up into the boat, and there was blood pumping from his back.
Harry believes the dolphins definitely saved Martin's life.
He was in the water plenty enough time with enough blood around him for that shark to kill him. It was scared off by something. I think it was the dolphins.
Dolphin expert and University of Haifa professor Oz Goldman agrees.
The dolphins simply got the shark away from the swimmer in the way they know best. They surrounded the swimmer with their bodies and whipped their fins. They jumped in and out of the water and just made the shark leave.
Captain Itzhak Herman, who witnessed the rescue, also believes the dolphins saved Martin's life.
Not only were they friendly, they were really human in a sense. We could see them actually making waves in the water around him, with a lot of foam, as if a big school of fish was there.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't know how he's still here. He shouldn't be here. He is incredibly lucky.
I did say, when I was laying there, I just said, please God, don't let me die here. So I think it's a little bit of God, a little bit of the dolphins.
Professionals who work with wild animals understand it's a risky business. Ramon Bravo, the Jacques Cousteau of Mexico, found out just how risky in the waters of the Yucatan Peninsula. He and his team had captured 4 sharks and drugged them so they could photograph and study them for 2 days. What Ramon didn't know was that one of the sharks was especially hostile.
When the drugs wore off and the sharks were released, one of the predators immediately swam after Ramon. He's trying to get away when suddenly the shark attacks. In seconds, the shark's razor teeth inflicted a wound that would require hours of surgery and more than 80 stitches. Watch again as the shark aggressively pursues the swimmer and then attacks.
Some people face the dangers of the deep virtually every day. They're the lifeguards on our beaches, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for the life-saving work they do. Now, just imagine you're a lifeguard swimming in the ocean. You're attacked by a shark, and you're a woman in a very delicate condition.
Vero Beach, Florida, October 26, 1993.
See you later.
Lifeguard Dawn Shaman was 6.5 months pregnant at the time. Wanting to stay in shape during a pregnancy, Dawn started the day with an ocean swim. Ironically, that morning, her husband had specifically asked her not to go in the water unless it was an emergency. She swam out beyond the breakers and began swimming parallel to the shore. What Dawn didn't know was that there was a shark in the water with her that morning. Dawn was in the middle of her workout when the shark attacked. The force of the attack spun her around 180 degrees in the water.
I was just swimming nice, easy cross stroke, and I felt something slam into me and spin me around. It was the oddest feeling, and all of a sudden I felt like I hit a wall in the water. And when I sat up, I knew instantly I was attacked by a shark.
Frightened and bleeding, Dawn feared for her baby's life as well as her own.
My hand was over my stomach, and I was pregnant, and I thought for sure I got the baby. So I felt something burning. I lifted my hand out of the water, and it was just covered with blood. It was just dripping. Right around me, in the vicinity of me, I saw the water was red. And I got nervous, and I rolled over up onto my hip, and my whole leg was wide open of a gash, and you know, blood everywhere, clumps of it coming out.
Because she was out past the breakers, Dawn's cries for help went unanswered. Fearing the shark would attack again, Dawn had no choice but to try to swim to shore in the bloody water.
Sharks are not intentionally attacking human beings. They're trying to consume a fish. In most of the cases on the east coast of Florida where this attack has occurred, the shark is trying to capture a small mullet or sardine that is adjacent to the shore, rushing in to grab it. As it turns out, it's a splashing hand or splashing foot.
I didn't know what to do. I started to panic. I started to hyperventilate. I was very nervous. And, you know, being pregnant, I couldn't see my stomach. I couldn't see if it got the baby, if it cut my leg, or my stomach, too. So I started to swim in with one arm, one leg, because the other two were, you know, it hurt too bad to do anything with them.
Dawn struggled through the surf to escape the deadly predator.
I was very concerned for the baby. I was 6.5 months pregnant. I, you know, had quite a size belly on me. It was my first child. Help! And to feel something of that force slam into my stomach, I was thinking miscarriage or, you know, the baby maybe, you know, dying or what. I wasn't sure.
Finally, Dawn reached the shore where the other lifeguard on duty, Chris Henderson, began to administer aid.
It's okay.
Oh, my baby.
After I called EMS to activate them, I called Dawn's husband, Bill, and I told him that she had been bitten by a shark. And he, on the phone, he totally did not believe me, and he stated that he just told her that morning that don't go swimming, you're pregnant, you don't need to get hit, you might get bit by a shark.
But when Dawn's husband, a public safety officer who was working nearby, heard the call go out for a shark attack victim, he rushed to the scene.
Just hold tight. I had two major concerns. One was for Dawn, and one was for the baby. And I was sort of torn because, I mean, you know, Dawn was injured, seriously injured, and I also was concerned that we had a baby.
Dawn was taken to a nearby hospital where it took 80 stitches to close the 7-inch gash in her leg and the lacerations on her wrists. But the baby still wasn't out of danger.
The next day, I started having severe back pains, and I've never had a baby, so I didn't know. My husband, I told him I had severe back pain, rubbed my back, and then I said, okay, it's fine. It went away. He goes, that's contractions, you're in labor.
Doctors succeeded in stopping the premature labor with medication, and Dawn spent the remaining 3 months of her pregnancy in bed.
After her bed rest was over and they felt that it was safe for the baby to be delivered, Dawn stopped her medication, and we had a healthy baby boy, 7 pounds. And his name is McIntyre Shark Shaman. We had to put the shark in there. We figured it would be appropriate.
I think Dawn was very lucky in that the attack occurred on her leg and her hand.
I feel very lucky. I feel lucky for myself and for my child. He almost died. I've been through 2 surgeries, 2 years of hand therapy, but the most important thing is that my son is very healthy and there's nothing wrong with him.
When we continue, a deer attack turns deadly. The real story of the man who barged in on the bears at the San Diego Zoo, and the glory and gore of bullfighting. All on When Animals Attack.
Sometimes when animals attack, it's part of an ancient spectacle. Bullfighting pits man against animal in a violent contest, to kill or be killed. To prove his skill, the matador must kill the bull as it attacks. To survive, if only to attack again, the bull must kill the matador.
Notice how this fighter is in the extremely dangerous kneeling position as the bull enters the ring. He doesn't have a chance. Rescued by his colleagues, the stricken matador is rushed to the hospital. This fighter's luck takes a nasty turn for the worse when the raging bull hurls him into the air like a rag doll, then butts him with its head for good measure. Remarkably, the fighter is back on his feet, undoubtedly feeling the adrenaline rush of the attack. He's lucky to be alive. This bull wastes no time dispatching the fighter. Despite the fighter's seeming superiority, when caught off guard, he's defenseless against the superpower of the bull.
Since ancient times, man has tempted his fate with animals. In the wild, in the circus, in zoos, even in his own backyard. In this footage from Australia, ambulance driver John Cullen is showing off a python at a charity event, when the snake proves he has a mind of his own.
To get around me and apply pressure.
Watch what happens when the python unexpectedly wraps itself around Cullen's neck. With only a few more coils, it could easily choke him to death. Now watch what happens when the python wraps itself around his legs. To unwrap the coils of an aggressive python, one must break the hold at its tail, then peel the snake off until it can no longer use its deadly constricting muscles.
How would you feel if you were attacked in your own backyard? Horrified? Threatened? Violated? The Pacific Northwest is the setting for our next story about an unsuspecting family that was terrorized in their backyard by a vicious predator.
On December 12, 1995, Darlene Molina of Chiloquin, Oregon, had just returned home from a trip to Merrill, Oregon. Darlene's husband, Larry, had just landed a new job there and would be returning immediately to start work. With them was Darlene's 3-year-old grandson, Brian Boggs. They had no idea tragedy was about to strike. While Brian played outside, Darlene helped Larry get ready for his trip.
Where's my sleeping bag?
In the bedroom. Oh, is Brian inside?
I don't know.
So I didn't think anything about it, just opened the front door and was going to open the door for him to come in. There was no Brian. He was just totally missing.
That's when Darlene heard Brian scream.
It was a funny grandma scream. It was like not pain at that time, but there was just something I detected in his voice. Something wasn't right.
As Darlene followed her grandson's cries for help, she knew something terrible had happened.
So I started running up towards the hill, and I ran across one of his boots. Brian! And I ran farther towards the screaming. There was another boot. It just wasn't making any sense to me.
Darlene found her grandson in the woods, in the mouth of a 100-pound wolf.
I ran towards him, and as the wolf seen me running towards them, he grabbed my grandson in the torso and was shaking him. Started to run farther up the hill, away from me.
But every time Darlene tried to reach for Brian, the wolf snatched him away and ran deeper into the woods.
Brian!
I knew there was imminent danger. My grandson was going to be killed in front of my eyes. It was like watching a movie, and for a split second I thought, you read about this, you hear about it, but you never in your life experience something like this.
Finally, Darlene caught up with the wolf.
I leaped on top of the wolf like a football player. I tackled him, spun around, hovered over my grandson, picked him up. He was just blankly staring up at the sky. There was no more movement, no more screaming, and I actually believed I was taking a dead baby off of the hill.
Even as Darlene fled with Brian, the wolf continued to attack until she reached the house. No one in the house even realized the attack had occurred. The Molina's house guest, Brandon Cunningham, helped Darlene try to stop the bleeding.
And he had a chest wound right about here, I guess, and you could hear air coming out. And so I went back into the kitchen and started getting towels and stuff, and we're placing them over him.
When I applied the pressure to him is when I realized he was still alive. He started crying and screaming, and I broke down at that point. I just went totally hysterical. And I remember continually telling him, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry.
Experts believe that wolf-dog hybrids like the one that attacked Brian are even more dangerous than pure wolves.
A wolf dog is much more dangerous potentially than a pure wolf, simply because of the unpredictable nature. You're not sure whether the animal is going to respond like a dog or like a wolf or like a blending of the two. What you've got in this case is a hybrid with the wolf side of his character attacking out of prey drive, which is a predator's natural urge to hunt and kill small animals, coupled with the dog side of his character having been raised in captivity, socialized with people, and lacking a wild, full wolf's natural fear of man.
Brian was treated for loss of blood, a punctured lung, and 39 puncture wounds on his back, chest, and abdomen. He was in surgery for more than 3 hours. Fortunately, the wolf did not have rabies, and miraculously, Brian suffered no serious wounds to his face or neck.
I feel Brian was extremely lucky, because if it had been a moments later I had come upon the scene, Brian would have been killed. I feel lucky, and I feel like someone was looking over us that day, that I was able to rescue him before he did kill Brian.
Coming up, what really happened at the San Diego Zoo when a man entered a cage full of bears. Plus, a deer savagely attacks an unsuspecting hunter. On When Animals Attack. You've probably heard this next story on the news. It involves a young man who was attacked by a bear at the San Diego Zoo. All we were told at the time was that he went into the bear's enclosure because he thought the bears had motion for him to come in. Well, there's more to the story, much more. Here's what really happened in San Diego on that fateful day. The world-famous San Diego Zoo attracts thousands of people every day. Among the many visitors on June 28, 1996, was a young man with an illness known as paranoid schizophrenia, an illness that severely distorts reality. The young man's name was Matthew.
Matthew was a model college student up until about the age of 21. He has a computer science engineering degree, and he was a very well-liked individual up until that point. At about the time he turned 21, I guess, he started having some chemical imbalances in his body, and that led him to the point where he couldn't really focus on reality so much. He had real difficulty perceiving what was real and making decisions and judgments based on fact.
Wandering alone through the zoo, Matthew ended up in Bear and Cat Canyon, in front of an enclosure that contained 2 Manchurian brown bears.
Matthew felt that the bears had been waving to him, basically. He felt they'd been friendly towards him and had been motioning for him to enter their enclosure. So he felt he should be friendly and go see what they'd been motioning to him about.
Matthew climbed into the enclosure and slid down a back wall into the bear's pool. Within moments, he found himself face to face with one of the bears.
Well, Matthew climbed at least 2 fences and then dropped down into the moated area. The bears were curious, and bears are curious by nature. As a result, they came over and sniffed him, and then something caused them to attack him.
Basically, the bear grabbed Matthew around the upper thigh, sunk his teeth in, and the teeth met, and it shook him.
Whether the bear was trying to kill him or not, that's hard to say, because this is a bear, again, it was raised around people, but it doesn't know people are edible.
He felt kind of betrayed. He felt that the bear had been friendly, and they had turned on him. Basically, he felt it was time to leave.
Leaving wasn't so easy. Matthew had been seriously wounded, and even though he had managed to retreat back into the bear's pool, he still wasn't out of harm's way.
I was amazed that he was able to get out of there alive. Most people that have ended up in bear enclosures with captive bears have died as a result.
But San Diego zookeepers and security personnel acted quickly. Using high-pressure water hoses and blasts from fire extinguishers, they herded the bears back into their dens so Matthew could be rescued.
Matthew was extremely lucky. You have to remember that these bears are strong and powerful, and they could have easily dismembered him in a matter of seconds.
Matthew is still recovering from severe lacerations to his groin and nerve damage to one leg that will require neurosurgery. Although Matthew still may not realize what he did, we can learn an important lesson. Even in captivity, wild animals are always unpredictable.
It's not the bear's fault. They were doing what comes naturally. It's not San Diego Zoo's fault because they had the proper safeguards to keep people out of the enclosure. And it's not really Matthew's fault.
Well, I hope this incident can bring attention to schizophrenia, which is a terrible disease which can bring down a family member in the prime of their life.
Still to come, a dangerous deer. Next on When Animals Attack. We conclude with a very unusual attack. Alarming not only because of why it occurred, but also because it nearly resulted in death. It all began when Lynn Chestnut of Toledo, Washington, decided it would be amusing to make a video for his hunting buddies, showing him being pursued by an elk. Lynn applied elk scent to his body, then asked his wife Rosemary to videotape the event.
I didn't think it was a good idea at all. That's why it took him 3 weeks to talk me into actually going with him. But he persuaded me that he wasn't going to get hurt, nothing was going to, really happen, it would be bad, and so I consented to go.
So I went to the school and I borrowed some football pads. I knew it wouldn't really save my life, but I figured, well, it'd help, maybe keep him from poking me in the kidneys or something.
The Chestnuts had no idea what Lynn was in for when suddenly the deer attacked.
I realized I wasn't ready for a real outright attack when the deer attacked me, got me down on the ground with beating my face and stuff.
What was so terrifying about this experience was that as I was looking through the camera, I just knew in my mind that I was videoing my husband being killed.
Well, the scariest part was when I rolled into him and then he really started smacking into my face. And I was getting weak enough that I couldn't, fend him off very good.
I realized my husband was in trouble when the deer came up on its hind legs like a bear and started coming down on him and pounding him to the ground in such force and hitting him on the head and everything. I knew it. I just knew it.
At one point I thought he might kill me, because I was so weak and he was really coming at me strong, and I realized that the harder I fought him, to defend myself, the harder he tore into me.
No, I'll never let him do it again, and it was not a good idea. I wished I'd never done it.
I thought I was pretty well ready, but I knew that, I was taking a pretty good chance.
My husband's very lucky that he's here today. I really believe that. I believe it with my whole heart. I think he's one of the luckiest persons in the world. I really do, because if that deer would have used his horns instead of his feet, he wouldn't be here today.
A hunter trying to impress his friends with an ill-conceived prank. A deer minding its own business. The combination could have been lethal.